Hi, readers. Welcome back to A Boy Called Bat. We are in chapter 19 called A Blessing of Sorts. Nights later at bedtime, Janie noticed the nice thing that Bet had done to thank her for coming up with the perfect name for Thor. It had taken him 2 days to forgive Janie for being so mean during spaghetti night and another day to come up with an idea. He'd been waiting ever since for Janie to notice, so when she called out from her bedroom, "Mom, have you seen the top part of my pajama unicorn pants?" Bat felt excited. "I did all the laundry. That was in the basket," Mom answered. "You washed the bottoms but not the top?" Janie said. "Then you must not have put the top in the laundry basket." "Why would I put in the bottoms but not the top?" Janie asked. "Why would I wash just the bottoms if the top was in the basket too?" Mom asked back. Then it was time for Bat to reveal the nice thing. "I know where your unicorn pajama top is," he said. "You do?" Mom and Janie said together. "Yes," said Bat. "I took it out of the dirty laundry basket." "Why would you do that?" Mom asked. "Because if I waited until after you washed it, and then Thor wouldn't recognize Janie's scent." Janie had been the one to name Thor. Even though Bat didn't like the idea of sharing Thor with anyone, Janie had earned the right for Thor to know who she was. "Did you give that rodent my pajama top?" Janie's voice climbed higher and higher. "Actually," Bat said, "skunks aren't rodents. They're Mephitidae, something like that. People used to think that they belonged in the same family as weasels, ferrets, and badgers, but this scientist named Dr. Jerry Dragoo figured out that—" "It doesn't matter," Janie said, interrupting him. "Go get my pajama top right now." "But it does matter," said Bat. Janie was not interested in hearing the difference between Mephitidae and Mustelidae. She refused to listen to anything until after Bat had gone to Thor's enclosure and retrieved the unicorn pajama top from the pile where Thor slept. And when he tried to hand it over to her, she wouldn't take it. "It smells like animal," she says. "It smelled like animal before too," Bat said, "because I took it from the dirty laundry basket and it still smelled like you." She didn't scream exactly. Bat didn't know what to call the sound that she made just before she spun around, stomped back into her room, and slammed the door. Can you picture that happening? She spun around, I'm sure quite angrily, stomped back into her room, and slammed the door. Bat felt tears gathering, ready to spill. Mom came over and hugged him tight. She didn't say anything, but she rocked him back and forth in the way that he liked. And after a moment, Bat felt the sting of his tears begin to fade. "It was a nice gesture," Mom murmured into his ear. Bat liked the hot warmth of her breath. "Baby skunks are easier than sisters," Bat said. "That may be true," Mom answered, "but there are lots of baby skunks in this world, and you only have one sister." Gently, she took Janie's pajama top from Bat's hand. He hadn't realized that he was still clutching it. "Come on," she said. "I'll teach you how to do laundry." "Okay," Bat said. "But first I need to check one thing." He stuck his head into Thor's enclosure to make sure the kit was settled back in after having his nest disturbed. Thor was sleeping soundly, making a noise like a tiny little snore. Bat pulled one of his own t-shirts up over Thor's body, tucking him in. Then he latched the enclosure and followed Mom to the laundry room. "Maybe if we use extra fabric softener," he said, "and make the pajama top softer than it's ever been, then maybe Janie won't be so mad." "I think that's a very good idea," Mom said, "and you can pour it in." Have you ever upset someone when you were trying to really do a good thing? Yeah, now Bat's going to try to fix the problem, isn't he? Chapter 20 is called Problems. What a coincidence. "Earth to Bat," Mr. Grayson said. Bat looked up. He had been staring at his math work in front of him, but he hadn't been doing the problems. Usually, Bat liked math problems because he was good at them and they made sense. Usually, Bat asked for extra math problems when he was done with his regular math problems. But today, Bat didn't feel like doing the regular math problems, even though they were easy. Today, all Bat could think about was that time was passing very quickly and that he still hadn't heard back from Dr. Jerry Dragoo, world skunk expert. "You look like you're having a hard time focusing today, Bat," said Mr. Grayson. "I'm not having a hard time focusing," said Bat. "Okay, let me rephrase that. You look like you're having a hard time focusing on your schoolwork today, Bat." "Yes," said Bat. "I am focused on something else." He can't think about anything other than that stupid baby skunk, said Luca. Thor isn't stupid, Bat said. He felt his throat grow tighter with anger. Once my dog got sprayed by a skunk when we were camping, Israel said. He was stinky for a week. Okay, Mr. Grayson said. This is all very interesting, but right now is math time, not skunk time. There should be a skunk time at school, thought Bat. He picked up his pencil and forced his brain to focus on his math problems. Most of them were too easy to even bother working out on paper, but he showed all the steps because Mr. Grayson liked it when he showed his work, and Bat liked Mr. Grayson. While part of Bat's brain worked with his hand to do the math work, he let another part of his brain think about skunk time. If there were a skunk time at school, like math time and language arts time and yoga time, then maybe Bat could bring Thor with him. Maybe skunk time would be when everyone in class did research about skunks and wrote reports about skunks and built skunk dioramas. Over the last week, Bat had spent as much time as he could with Thor, but every day he had to leave him when it was time for school. The kit's fur was growing in all over, fuzzy, wild black hair with a bright white stripe down the center, from the tip of his nose to the tip of his tail. He was still small enough to fit, curled into a little ball, into Bat's two hands. Here is a picture of Bat holding Thor. If you just think about the color of the animal and how they're black with that white strip going all the way down from their nose to their end of their tail, it is a pretty creature, isn't it? I think when we see one, though, we just automatically think, ew, stinky. And he'd had plenty of time to spend with Thor because Janie had barely spoken to him since the pajama top incident. She spent all of her time in her room practicing the Off With Her Head song for her Queen audition and going over to Ezra's house. Now and every other Friday was coming, and Bat would have to go with Janie to Dad's house. Even worse, no matter how much Bat begged and pleaded and bounced up and down, no matter how clearly he explained to Mom why she should change her mind, Thor would not be going to Dad's house with Bat and Jamie. This every other Friday meant that Thor had already spent 2 weeks living with Bat and his family. And if Bat didn't find a way to change Mom's mind in 2 more weeks, Thor would be leaving for the rescue center. Thor will be fine, Bat, Mom had said. Lawrence is going to take him for the weekend. It wasn't that Lawrence couldn't do a good job of taking care of animals, Bat thought as he finished the last row of math problems. It wasn't that Bat didn't trust Lawrence. It was just that, well, Bat didn't want anyone else taking care of the skunk kit. What if Lawrence did a better job? What if Thor was happier at Lawrence's house than at his house? And even if Lawrence was trustworthy, no one was perfect. What if Lawrence put the animal carrier on top of his car while he unlocked the door, then he forgot it was up there and he drove away? I've done that before with a coffee cup, put it on top of the car, but not a baby animal. What if Lawrence went out to get some ice cream and didn't remember to lock the door to his house, and someone broke in and stole Thor? Even if everything went just right, at the end of the weekend, they would still be 2 days closer to Thor leaving them forever. Just thinking about that made Bat feel queasy. You know, like a stomach ache, like your stomach, like butterflies, it's just not settled. Like he'd been jumping on a trampoline with a stomach full of pizza. Bat, said Mr. Grayson, do you need to take a little break? Bat stopped tapping his heels under the table. He pulled the neck off of his t-shirt, which he'd been sucking on in the way he sometimes did when he felt nervous, out of his mouth. He set his pencil down. Yes, please. So if you picture that, he was tapping his foot, and he had the neck of his shirt in his mouth, and he was sucking on it. So those are 2 things that I'm inferring. I'm using the clues that the author gave us to let us know that there were times when Bat needed to take a break, and he got nervous about things. So tapping his foot, sucking on his shirt, those are things that Mr. Grayson probably has realized that as clues when Bat needed to get up and take a break and go think about something else. Try to, anyway, think about something else. In the back of the room, Baby Cakes sat placidly licking a light pink wheel of salt. Her ears flopped to the sides in relaxation. Bat wished he felt as calm as Baby Cakes looked. He climbed into her enclosure and sat cross-legged beside her, scratching behind her ears and thinking about the weekend. If his parents weren't divorced, Then he wouldn't have to leave home every other weekend and go to his dad's dumb apartment. If his parents weren't divorced, Thor wouldn't be spending the week with Lawrence. All right, we're gonna do chapter 21, and then in today, chapter 21 is called Organizational Systems. I wonder how he's gonna do spending the weekend with Dad, away from Thor. At least Dad liked to go to the candy store as much as Bat did. That was one good thing about every other weekends. On Saturday morning after breakfast and dishes, Dad pulled their bicycles out of his garage. Unlike the garage at home, which was twice as big and 4 times as crowded, Dad's garage was labeled and organized. Helmets were kept in a clear plastic bin marked helmets. The bikes, instead of leaning them up against a wall or on each other, they were pulled neatly into a bike rack like the one at school. And Dad always arranged them in order of size, left to right, large, medium, small. A metal rack in one corner held car supplies, spare containers of oil, a big jug of windshield wiper fluid, a little vacuum that sat ready with a charger. There was a tool bench too. An assortment of wrenches swung from hooks across the front. Coffee cans held screws and nails. Sometimes Dad let Bat pound nails into pieces of scrap wood, as long as he wore safety goggles. Bat approved of Dad's garage. Remember, he likes things nice and orderly. It was just under a 1-mile ride to the Sugar Shack, Bat's favorite candy store. To get there, Bat and Janie and Dad rode out of Dad's apartment. They rode out of Dad's apartment complex and down a bike path towards Central Quincy. They crossed the river on a bridge made just for bicycles and pedestrians before turning onto 3rd Street. So this ride is making me think about our bike trails around here. Maybe you've been on them before. While Bat was double checking the lock on his bike outside the Sugar Shack, he heard someone say his name. It was Israel from school. It took Bat a second to figure out who he was because Bat hadn't ever seen Israel anywhere but school, and never on a weekend. "What are you doing here?" Israel asked. He was smiling in a way that showed almost all of his teeth. He had, Bat noticed, a piece of something green, maybe cucumber, stuck in between the front 2 teeth. "We're going to buy some candy," Bat said. "Cool," Israel said. And then we just had brunch next door. And he pointed to the Broken Yoke Cafe. A man and woman were pushing through the door just then, and they waved. Israel waved back. "That's what I would have guessed," Bat said. "You have food in your teeth." Israel's smile faded away. "Okay," said Bat. "See you Monday at school." "Hey," said Israel. "Wait." Bat waited. "I was wondering about the skunk. Do you still have him?" "Of course I do," said Bat. "Well, not right now, because I had to spend the weekend with my dad." "Oh," said Israel. "I didn't know your parents were divorced." Bat didn't say anything to that because it wasn't a question. Still, Israel stood there on the sidewalk like he was waiting for Bat to say something. The grown-ups who had waved at Israel walked over and stood behind him, and now it felt like all 3 of them were waiting for Bat to say something or to do something. "Well, goodbye," Bat said, and he walked away. "Hey, Sport, is that a friend from school?" Dad's face looked just about as excited as it looked when he was watching baseball. "Bat doesn't have friends," Janie said, but not in a mean voice, just a matter-of-fact voice. "I'm sure that's not true," Dad said. "It's not true," Bat answered. "Lawrence is my friend, and Mr. Grayson." "Oh, Bat, grown-ups don't count," Janie said. And then she pulled open the door to the candy store and held it for Bat to pass inside. The Sugar Shack was an exceptional candy store. It had bins full of M&Ms separated into colors. So if you wanted exactly 11 greens and 11 blues, but no yellows, reds, or oranges, as Bat did, you could get exactly that. Along the back wall were all the gummies: gummy bears, gummy worms, gummy sharks, gummy hippos, gummy rhinos, gummy jellyfish, gummy dinosaurs, gummy zebras, gummy frogs, gummy sea stars, gummy camels, gummy parrots, gummy crabs. That's a lot of gummies. Bat didn't like gummy candy, but he always got one gummy sea star anyway. He liked the way it felt in his hand. Big barrels of full, hard candies formed the aisles: jawbreakers and gumballs and candy necklaces and rock candy and ring pops. Just inside the door was a case of jelly beans arranged in a rainbow of colors. Near the counter stood a candy bar display with all the ordinary stuff but harder to find candy bars too, like Violet Crumble bars and Zagnut bars. You sure inherited my sweet tooth, Dad said, loading up on his own plastic bag with jelly beans. Actually, Bat said, teeth have nothing to do with it. People taste with their tongues and their noses. Did you stick that gummy bear up your nose to taste it? Janie asked. Her bag was full of mishmash of candies, and that did not make sense to Bat. It's a gummy sea star, Bat said, and no, the way something smells is part of how you taste it. Well, I guess that's why people don't eat skunk meat, Janie said. Pee-you. She wrinkled up her nose and stuck out her tongue. Thor doesn't stink, Bat said. He doesn't even spray yet. But he will, said Janie. I hope not until after we give him to the rescue. Maybe we'll keep him, Bat whispered. Sport, your mom can't adopt every stray animal that comes into her clinic, Dad said. She'd have a zoo if she did. We won't adopt all of them, said Bat. Just this one. Mom said we're only going to keep him for a couple more weeks, Janie told to Dad. But Bat's getting too attached. Bat started bouncing the balls off his feet. He clutched his plastic bag, candy bag with his fist. He wrinkled it in a way that bothered his ears. So then he loosened his fingers and let go. So I think he's starting to get anxious. Blue and green M&Ms bounced and rolled across the floor of the sugar shack. Oh no, he spilled his M&Ms. Sport, you got to be more careful, Dad said, his eyebrows pointing in at his nose. Bat felt tears swelling up in his eyes. He swiped at his face with the arm of his shirt and turned toward the door. Under the sole of his shoe, he felt the crunch, squish of a flattened M&M. And that's the end of chapter 21. Bye, guys. See you next time.